Hi, my name is Saul, and I'm the Executive Director of Climate Action Network Canada. Climate Action Network Canada is a coalition of about 75 Canadian organizations from across the country that are working together to push for action on climate change. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Harper government record when it comes to climate change and our work to phase out oil, coal and gas and ramp up clean, renewable energy. Before I do, though, I want to make one thing clear. It's not all bad news in Canada. Climate change leadership does exist. There are provinces, there are municipalities, there are communities across the country that are taking action, and there are real success stories that we have. Unfortunately, at a federal level, those success stories don't really take hold. If you look at what the Harper government has been doing over the past 5 years, the core theme emerges that their approach is to tell Canadians they care about the issue and then do as little as they think politically possible, while at the same time ramping up an expansion of oil production within the country. And that seems to be consistent throughout the Harper government's approach. If you go way back to 2004, 2005, you can see right off the bat that Prime Minister Harper is basically coming out in a hostile way when it comes to taking action on climate change. One of his famous quotes is in a fundraising letter where he called the Kyoto Protocol a socialist conspiracy designed to suck resources out of the north and transfer them to the south. And he called for a made-in-Canada solution to the problem of climate change rather than have Canada honor the international obligations that it had taken on. And so when he got elected, it wasn't surprising that one of the first things he did is he openly announced that Canada would be the first country in history to ratify and sign the Kyoto Protocol and then openly announce that it had no intention of honoring its obligations. The second thing he did was he tore down a suite of programs designed to help with energy efficiency and support renewable energy. And then he built them back up again with new names at slightly lower levels and left one or two core programs like support for low-income energy efficiency off when he put the programs back together. Then what Prime Minister Harper did is he announced the Clean Air Act, which was essentially a very weak proposal when it came to regulating industrial greenhouse gas emissions. All of the other parties said you don't actually need a new law. As a result of the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, we've already identified carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions as toxic substances. All you have to do is regulate. And if in fact you do want a new law, the opposition party said, then let's at least have a good law. So they amended the law to improve the Clean Air Act so that it would do a better job of fighting climate change. And as soon as they had finished doing that, Prime Minister Harper basically abandoned it. Then in 2007, he returned and he launched Turning the Corner, which he said would, as a result of this plan, they would have greenhouse gas regulations in place for industry and happening by January 1st, 2010. And then he proceeded to do nothing. In 2008, they launched Turning the Corner again. Once again, they said, we'll have greenhouse gas regulations for industry in place and functioning by January 1st, 2010. And then they proceeded to do nothing. By 2009, they started to sing a slightly different song. The election in the United States had happened, and rather than move forward with another promise to do something and then do nothing, they basically said, oh, we'll do whatever the United States does. And then, of course, they proceeded to do nothing. The International Climate Change Conference in Copenhagen rolled around, and Canada came home and was the only country in the industrialized world, or in fact anywhere in the world, to return from the international climate change negotiations in Copenhagen and announce that they were actually weakening their greenhouse gas emission targets. Two other things were happening in 2010 in the wake of the Copenhagen conference. One was that the programs that had been put in place by the Harper government when they first came in to support renewable energy and energy efficiency were running out of money. And groups were warning the Harper government that if they didn't act to refund some of these programs, Canada would emerge as the only country in the industrialized world that had allowed its only major federal program to support renewable energy to basically run out of money. And in fact, that is what has happened. The other thing that two other international themes emerged during 2010 as well. Canada became the only country ever to win 5 consecutive Fossil of the Year awards at the International Climate Change negotiations. These colossal fossil awards are an award handed out by over 400 organizations from around the world to the country that had done the most to disrupt and undermine the international climate change negotiations. And while in previous years the Harper government had shared these awards with the Bush administration, they now stood alone in receiving this dubious honor. The other thing that happened was particularly insidious. It became apparent that not only was Canada refusing to take action at home, but we were actively going into other countries and lobbying to weaken and kill clean fuels policies in other countries. So in places like California, where they were adopting a low-carbon fuel standard that rightly acknowledged that tar sands oil was disproportionately dirty in comparison to other oil and created disincentives for the use of tar sands oil, Canada was actively working to undermine those policies. Same in the European Union with a similar kind of low carbon fuel standard called the Fuel Quality Directive. Canada has been lobbying, the only country outside the European to be entering the debate at all. Canada has actually been lobbying to weaken the policies of these countries in their attempt to clean up fuels. So not only are we not doing enough at home, but the most active component of our international energy policy is actually to travel around the world weakening climate change policies of other countries. And there's ample evidence that this is a coordinated effort on the part of the Harper government. They have adopted a couple pieces of legislation that were nominally at least designed to fight climate change. They adopted an ethanol promotion law. But that was essentially a farm subsidy, and in the end, it doesn't really have any meaningful impact in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in Canada. The government did also adopt the US fuel efficiency standards. But when we analyzed the fuel efficiency standards, what we saw is that Canada coming in line with the US fuel efficiency standards was basically a business as usual proposition. It didn't actually require Canadian fuel efficiency standards to deviate from the trajectory that they were already on. So now we find ourselves in a position today where Canada has weak targets and we have no plan to achieve those targets. The Environment Minister Kent is wandering around saying Canada does have a plan, but in fact, he's not being honest with Canadians. The government has only explained how they're going to achieve 25% of their own weak targets. And at the same time, we have a government that is doing everything it can at every level to promote the rapid expansion of the dirtiest oil in the world. So unfortunately, the situation we find ourselves in today when it comes to federal climate change policy is that we have a government that tells you they care, but in practice they do as little as possible. And in the meantime, they're working to radically expand the tar sands. Unfortunately, we have a situation right now where literally oil companies are running the energy policy of the federal government. It's outrageous, it's unethical. And it's time to phase out oil, coal, and gas and ramp up the efficient use of renewable energy. Thank you very much.